This is Corey Jones with the Be Ready with Safety Man podcast. Join us every week for a new podcast. Follow us everywhere podcasts are played and on YouTube, Be Ready with Safety Man. This is Corey Jones. All right, welcome to Be Ready with Safety Man, Be Ready with Safety Man podcast. Safety Man does three things. We do three things well. Taser training. Tasers are legal in the state of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York City, Philadelphia. Tasers are designed to keep you safe with the proper training. Safety Man has been training tasers since 2012. We also do active shooter training, stranger danger training. We'll come to your home, office, your business, your school, your house of worship, daycare, any place. You have a lot of people. We'll train you to see the signs of, hopefully prevent, handle if it happens, and then recover from one of those acts of violence. And finally, verbal judo. Verbal judo has been around for almost 30 years. We're an international company. In fact, we just finished training the United Nations Police and Six Flags Great Adventure, all of those guys, with verbal judo. We can increase your safety and decrease your liability and complaints. Today, I have Anthony Cya, my buddy. We've done a bunch of podcasts before, and Anthony, why don't you introduce yourself and today's topic for me, please?
All right, so I'm Anthony Cya. We've done a bunch of stuff law enforcement related or safety related. And so I thought that today would be a good day to talk about a little more serious of a topic that's kind of something that it needs to be more of a conversation. So amongst EMTs, firefighters, and police, one of the number one killers right now is actually suicide. Mm-hmm. And so I thought this would be a good conversation piece to talk about what's happening, why it's happening, what we can do to kind of fix this, or figure out who to talk to, or what. I mean, there's a lot that goes along with this.
Indeed. Definitely want to mitigate that as best we can.
The one thing that, I think that most people think of when they think of officers dying, they think of line of duty deaths, they think of movies and shootouts and big explosions, and that these are the ways that officers are dying. I believe that the number I had was in 2019, we had 134 line of duty deaths. And that's obviously horrendous. And that's something that we got to continue to work on, change. But USA Today reported in 2019, we had 228 reported police suicide deaths. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous, really. It's astronomical.
Unnecessary.
Why is it? First responders are 7 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts, according to a study done by the Washington University. So our first thing I would say is, why is this? Why is this happening?
Well, I know just from me having been in law enforcement for 27 years, is you do see the worst of everything. You spend the better part of your career assuming the worst is about to happen, getting there and having that assumption confirmed that the worst is happening, and you can't really fix it. Sometimes the best you can do is put a Band-Aid on it or help people clean it up. And then, we weren't ever really trained how to deal with that. The buddy system, we weren't trained to really how to deal with that. You were considered weak or whatever if you brought that up. Only until very recently have there been peer-to-peer groups and professional de-stress groups and so forth.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about just like hotlines and phone lines, but there was not really, I would say, until about maybe the last 2 years have I actually seen training or heard about training that, I've been able to see firsthand. One quote I saw that I liked was, "We tend to solve everyone's problems, but not ours." Right. And so we kind of don't know how to handle that. We're taught how to fix everything else. There's a standard operating procedure for everything. If A, then B. If B, then C. But what if we are the A? What if we are the B? And then everyone kind of feels like awkward about how to handle those situations.
Well, where do you go? We're afraid. There's a stigma is an old word that carries a lot of heaviness to it. But you go and tell the supervisor or somebody that, I don't think I can come to work today because that crash or seeing that dead body or that dead child or that final domestic, affected me so much. I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm not coping well. You're afraid they're going to pull you off the street. Maybe that plum assignment that you have, maybe you're going to lose your stripes, maybe you're coming off SWAT, coming out of community policing or whatever it is. So we run that risk, at least a fear. It may not even be a real risk, but it's a fear that could happen.
And I think that's just something that's going to eventually change. And the more we talk about it, the better it's going to be. Because here's the thing, right? you get sick with an illness, you get sick with the flu, you get sick with something, you're throwing up. No one comes to your house and says, all right, we have to take away your gun because you're physically not 100% right now, you know?
Right.
No one says, okay, you're automatically off the SWAT team because you can't run as fast as you did 2 weeks ago. We're gonna give you some time off for that, you know, because you're sick right now. No, you come back to work in a week or two, you feel better, and you know you're right back in it. But when you say something along those lines, I think that's one of the problems, is that it's not open. So officers are scared to say those kinds of things because they know there's so much repercussions, and then you have to explain to neighbors and friends why you're home. You know, why aren't you at work right now? You know, what is going on? And so I think I always joke about mental health days, but I totally agree with you.
Absolutely.
You know, people say, well, sick days should be sick days. But in my mind, you know, if you're having a stressful couple weeks and you need it, you know, they say gone fishing or going out, you know, there's one thing between abusing sick time and actually, you know what, I need a day where I can just go out, go to the gym,
Right.
wake up a little bit late, sleep in a little bit late, get my mind refreshed, get my body refreshed, you know, go do a hobby, get my mind off stuff, and just really have a mental health sick day. But that's still kind of like something that's,
Yeah.
you know, not, you know, it's kind of looked negatively about as well.
Yeah. I obviously, I retired a year and a half ago, and it seems like the tide is starting to turn. I know that our Attorney General and Governor spearheaded a program for officer resiliency. I know some officers within the county have been working on officer resiliency, and I know that, you know, we lost an officer in Mount Laurel who's a very good friend of mine, Officer Erica Abar. You know, she took her life less than 2 weeks after I retired. She was on my platoon for a long time. She's been to my home a couple times. My wife and her were friendly. You know,
Yeah.
that hit really hard. And one of the things I always think of is being her friend and her supervisor, that I missed something.
Yeah, and yeah, I know. It feels, I have a friend too, he was not in law enforcement that took his life, but he was a roommate. And so then you start going back over, you know what, they said that this one time, you know, should I done, you know, you just start
Yeah.
playing that role in your head too. And I totally understand where you're coming from, especially as their direct supervisor. You start replaying that in your head and just asking questions, what could I have done?
Now, one good thing my agency did is they invited everybody in her platoon and anybody else who wanted to come, including me, who had been retired, like I said, for 3 years, to come in for a debrief. And they had what's called the Mercury team, a team of officers that will come in and just solicit discussion. How do you feel? What's going on? How did you first hear about it? You know, here's some resources. You know, nobody handles it the same way. So if you're sleeping fine today, Corey, maybe next week maybe you'll have trouble sleeping, or maybe you'll never have trouble sleeping. It doesn't mean you didn't care, or you're not wrong, or something's different about you. It's just everybody handles these things differently. But going back to what you're saying is that's one of those things that just piles up in our stress box.
Yeah.
Right? Is now I walk around with that. You know, certain things remind me of her. When I go do active shooter teaching, I'm always teaching about, there was this kick-ass girl that I worked with that, you know, women say that, you know, women can't fight, or women can't be expected to fight a man in an active shooter. Like, I tell you what, Abar was the first one in the school. We thought we had an active shooter on, and she ran that. She was running dudes. She was telling dudes what to do.
Yeah.
And now it's hard when I go to tell that story because she's passed away.
Yeah.
You know?
And just because you got, you know, that's the thing. We put on all this armor, but doesn't mean underneath we're not hurting or something like that. We did have some social media comments, so I'll interject them as we go along. Yeah. I won't use last names, but William said, officers need to feel more comfortable opening up and not holding it in. He recommends more debriefing.
Yes.
So, you know, there should be, you know, we see so much craziness and problematics that it becomes normal, and there should be more debriefing about these traumatic events when these things are happening. And sometimes they could be smaller things, you know, just more team meetings, more, you know, group meetings, just getting together for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey, where do you think we could have done better? How do you feel about this? You know, and just letting everything out. Like in a, you know, I don't want to see, a carefree room, but like a safe room. Like, all right, what we're talking about next 30 minutes, we're not recording this.
Right.
You know, you're not, you know, we're just going to get everything out on the table, get your feelings, expressions out now.
Yeah.
You know,
we used to do that. We say rank is outside the door.
Yeah.
Everybody in here is just talking about what they said. and what they saw and what they felt and so forth. A hot wash, we would call it, something immediately after, before anybody went home. And we could break that down into different types of things. People who are immediately involved, like if you had an officer involved shooting, maybe the 2, 3 officers that were there have a specific kind of a hot wash. And then the other officers that showed up but were working, but maybe did containment and never were at the scene. And then all the officers from the other towns who came in and worked the scene as far as containment, searches, perimeter, interviews, evidence, and all those other things. They're part of that event. They're going to get asked the same questions. They're going to watch the news article, get it wrong. They're going to have nightmares of survivor's guilt. So all those people do definitely need to be touched, I believe.
Yeah, and just bring them, and then you connect everyone together too. And so there isn't, people talking and, whisper down the lane about what happened, what didn't happen. You're on the same page, and now hey, that affected that guy. You see him out. Yo, man, how are you doing? Everything good? So you can have that conversation, what's going on, and check in on people, and make it more realistic. Because I feel like sometimes when traumatic things happen, maybe rank or structure might just do what they have to do and make the phone calls they have to do, but is it really helping? Is it really doing anything besides them just trying to do some CYA to check in? But
yeah, and they can do the CYA. They can call.
Yeah.
I get it. Not everybody's touchy feely. Not everybody.
Yeah, we don't need hugs or
Some people bite.
Yeah.
And some people will not feel comfortable providing that shoulder to cry on. But you need, as a manager, to know. We pay insurance. We got shoulders. We got professional shoulders. We got volunteer shoulders for my officers to, quote unquote, cry on, to vent to talk to. Because as a manager, that's a good officer that was involved in that incident. He or she did well. His or her crew did well. I need them back in service 100% as soon as possible, just from the management, from the widget side of it.
Yeah.
So it behooves him or her, that leader, to put the best plan in place to get those officers the help they need as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and so with help in place, I think one of the things that could definitely be thrown in there, and I didn't know this until I looked it up myself, but a lot of times therapy is seen as taboo or something you don't talk about. I would love to see at the academy level or even departmental, say, hey, I know a lot of departments bring in people for financial advice. They bring in people to, sign up for health insurance or life insurance.
Yeah.
Why not bring in some therapists and say, hey, this is what I specialize in. Here's my business card. I'll sit down with you guys for 15 minutes during your lunch break or whatever.
Yeah.
Why not? They're under the insurance plans. Bring them in. I'm sure there'd be tons of therapists that say, hey, I'll come in for 15 minutes for free advertisement.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden the officer has 3 or 4 phone numbers in his phone. And knows. I didn't know about any of this, that it was even included in health insurance until I personally went through something and I had to look it up myself. I said, oh, this is covered.
Yeah.
It's a $5 copay or $10 copay.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this was part of it. I thought, in my mind, I'm thinking it's like $500 a session and, it's all this real expensive, difficult stuff and you got to plan months in advance. But no, it's like, okay, yeah, everyone has this built into their state plans. You just have to make the phone call. But see, that's stuff that isn't normally transmitted. And it's just kind of figure it out on your own.
Yeah, and you know how officers are. If we don't trust somebody, if we don't create buy-in when we first see that person, we're not calling or going to that person. So as you clearly said, having somebody come to an FOP meeting or union meeting or some sort of event and say, hey, my name is Ed, I run the counseling sessions, if you have anything happen, here's a little bit about my background, I was a cop, I was a veteran, I was over in wherever, I did this and I got my doctorate and postdoctorate, and the first time you come see me, it's free, anything you say is confidential unless you talk about hurting yourself or some other person, but my specialty is I help officers deal with trauma.
Yeah.
And then walk around, shake some hands, put some cards in hands, maybe have a beer with the officers and say, hopefully I never see you, but I hope I see you.
Yeah. And make it commonplace, you know, hey.
That creates buy-in.
Yeah, make it commonplace so that it becomes a conversation oh, you don't talk to anyone about stuff? That's weird. Make it the opposite. Now it's make it seem not seem, but make it normal. And what's wrong with just talking to someone and letting it all out in a confidential spot where you can say, hey, this is what happened, this is how I dealt with it, make plans to get through it.
And you'll find that those people aren't single discipline. If you're going there talking about them how seeing a triple fatal accident is affecting you, and then you let them know it's affecting your sleep, and then you let them know it's affecting your work, and it's affecting your marriage, and it's affecting your family and your kids, they're not single discipline. They're not going to send you to 6 other therapists.
Yeah, they're going to work with you.
They can usually handle all that residual effects, all that residual stuff.
Yeah, and work on plans and putting things in place to get, because it starts snowballing, you keep it all in, and then that's what happens.
Right.
Lauren said on social media, one of the issues that she thinks is the problem is that officers are seen as a symbol of strength. It's hard for them to reach outside of the versions of themselves.
Yeah, welcome to me. Welcome to me, Lauren.
Yeah.
You just described me. I was Superman, right, my life. I'm safety man now, right? You think it's easy for me to go tell somebody I can't or couldn't cope with something.
Yeah.
But it's easier now because I have a very supportive wife who, she's a blessing, and which is really helpful too, is your family situation, being open with them as much as you can. That you don't have to tell them about the gore and the blood and the guts, Lauren, but let them know that I put on a Superman suit and I have a Batman utility belt, but I'm still human. I make mistakes. I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake, and all those things. And then if you're a support system for someone who's in, or you are in, make sure you have a support system, somebody you can talk to.
Dave said support at home is an issue. So police obviously have a higher rate of divorce than most professions. And one of the things that I've seen through some departments, without mentioning names, one of the things that I like is that they actually invite spouses and significant others to come in to some kinds of trainings, which I've seen. This is the first time in 2 years that I started seeing this about the last 2 years, which I liked.
Yes.
Make them part of the team. They don't have to know everything, how you do everything, but hey, bring them in to some high stress information that we're having and explain to them, because sometimes I know personally I had issues dealing with time differences, and I think that's a big constraint. And that's just not just us firefighters and EMTs and things. You're working crazy hours, different times. It's hard for someone that's on a normal schedule to not understand why you're sleeping until 2:30 in the afternoon when you went to bed at 8 in the morning. It's hard to deal with that.
Because your circadian rhythm is different, and you touched on it again. There is one of the things that I actually used to do is when I started dating my wife. Because I was still Superman, I was still proud. I used to bring her to the station like on a midnight shift and show her around, let her sit in the police car, play with the lights, let her see how dispatch worked, hit the siren, hit the horn, take her in the holding cell, take her in the armory with the weapons and all that kind of stuff. So when we would be talking on the phone or I would tell her a story, she could mentally visualize exactly. So Corey was sitting here when he gave briefing, and this is how far away the bad guys are from Corey, and this is how far he has to go to the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. So it made it more able for her, as Dave said, that support at home is definitely helpful because they can understand it. They can understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, and so one of the suggestions might be have an open house at your department where, close, not everyone obviously, but just close friends and family or significant others can come in. You could serve coffee and just get to meet everyone like once a year, twice a year, informal, just kind of hang out.
Yeah.
Hey, this is, what's been going on, just like an informal thing in your actual station.
Yep.
Make it a part of it. That could be a good idea too. We put some things down, ways to solve this problem. We're not going to solve the problem between us, but we can at least start the conversation, and hopefully some people listen to this. Maybe it sparks an idea and someone goes, hey, what about this? I like the one quote that I found, focus on the process and the outcome will take care of itself. So not working on specifically, okay, someone's passed away, now it's after the fact, we're setting up memorial funds and things like that. I mean, let's do the stuff that needs to be done now and lower this 228, suicidal number. And here's the thing about that too, and I don't know exactly, but I'm sure there's some numbers that are a little skewed because some things these people might have done as a suicide, but maybe they made it look like more of an accident because they didn't want that shame or that grief.
Exactly.
So they made it look accidental, like a drowning or an overdose, but it wasn't really supposed to be. So that number might actually be higher.
It could be. Because in their insurance repercussions, whether you take your life or as an accident.
And that's definitely, especially if you have life insurance and things like that, it negates a lot of things if it's suicidal. So there might be people or officers that took their lives and they just made it clean looking that it was, not under that. So that number probably is realistically probably closer to 250 maybe.
I know one way to definitely help this is we're proud. So any problem, whether it be a problem dealing with handling at work, or, I mean, we've all been there. We've all had a financial problem. We've all had a problem with a significant other. We've all had a problem with a kid that's not doing well at school, a sick parent, something else that's outside of work, but it's affecting our person, which is now affecting their work product.
Yeah.
And there's ways to get help and ways to get counseling and ways to get direction in that. You touched on it earlier. We said we all have financial planners and counselors, all those different things for deferred comps and 401ks and our pension. You know, if somebody starts to get behind, they feel that there's no way out, and they feel they're too proud because they've done everything else great in their career. They can go into a burning house, do CPR on somebody, and pull their gun in a bank robber. All that's great, but I can't manage my bills. How am I going to ask somebody? I'm supposed to be Superman.
Yeah.
You know, there's ways to quietly kind of get some help there.
Yeah.
But people, you start the conversation, I'm an action step person, and for me, an action step is talk to your department chaplain and let him or her direct you to it. Because our department chaplain, Pastor Eric, he is fantastic. He's available 24/7. He is fantastic. You call him and say, hey, just let's just talk, and he's not pushy, but he cares, And I know all the chaplains are like that.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Departmental chaplains is a new thing that has just started. I'm not to go into too much religion, but I think also you have lack of spirituality. Officers are scared to talk about those things, where I feel like probably 20, 30 years ago, officers would probably talk about religion more, and now it's kind of like, oh, we don't talk about that stuff at work,
Right. That's taboo in America, so it's going to be taboo.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that hurts too, because a lot of times in religion, your priest or your chaplain or your deacon or whatnot, they were your therapist. Yes. They were the person that you reached out to. So having police departments have chaplains is definitely a recommendation I would definitely make. I know firsthand that they work well. You do as well. That's definitely something that helps. They come around and make themselves available, especially if they're very outgoing.
Our chaplain performed my wedding ceremony for me and my wife.
There you go.
We became that tight in a year that we were able to ask him to do that, and he did that, and it was wonderful, obviously.
I wrote down this, and I think this is 100% true, and if you think about it, departments spend literally millions of dollars, millions on weapons, cars, body cameras, equipment, ammo. How much is spent on well-being?
Right.
Realistically, how much? Probably very, very little, if you think about it. The guy that's taking all the blunt stress and all this information and all these problems, like how much is being, like, I just put down some ideas of people that could come out and talk. And realistically, what's someone charging, like $500 a day to talk to a whole department for a few hours, and they might get some good big one. And these all aren't going to solve suicide by one, but I think at least gives it a chance for mental health.
Yeah.
Nutritional eating, right? I know that in the academies, I don't think they teach anything about nutritional eating. No. They tell you can eat in 5 minutes and be done.
Chick-fil-A, man.
Yeah, so nutritional eating, having a doctor or someone come out and explain, when you're working 12 hours, what you should and shouldn't be eating, what times, where, these things out. An exercise coach. Have someone come out. And because some departments, they don't have mandatory exercise, depending on what they have. Like, you can't make an officer, but that doesn't mean you can't introduce an officer to some ideas. Right. You might not be able to make him run a mile, but you can at least
somebody and enforcing her. There's a lot of ground between those two, right?
Like we talked about, bring a therapist out, and that could deal with stress management. But I know like a lot of departments don't spend any money on these kinds of things, and they're huge. And probably for a little bit amount of money, you could probably see, not only are you going to see hopefully less suicides, which is the end goal there, but probably more productivity amongst your officers. If your officers are less tired, less stressed, more fit, better looking, feel good about themselves, they're probably going to do more work.
They're probably more productive.
Yeah, they're probably going to produce,
and they can produce a better work product.
Yeah, exactly. Because now they're not freaking out on someone, and then all of a sudden they have an IA because at home they're dealing with this problem.
Right.
They've been eating like crap, sleeping like crap. All these things are piling up, and now they take it out and they become a viral video because they punched someone where they weren't supposed to hit them. Right. And now all of a sudden,
or they screamed at the soccer mom.
Yeah, exactly. And now they're the front page, and they're on every YouTube video.
And now that's going to cost money.
Yeah. So it's
the good thing is, and Attorney General Graywall with New Jersey has spearheaded this officer resiliency program. So the state is putting money into it, and eventually that's going to filter down where every county and every state and every local agency has to send their officers. I don't know how long the training is going to be, but some training how to cope, how to manage stress, how to deal with stress, how to reduce stress, and then where you can go if these techniques aren't helping.
Yeah.
Like even tactical breathing.
Yeah.
Is one good thing.
Yeah.
Right after something happens, is tactical breathing. Anybody doesn't know what that is, that's in through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, let it out through your mouth, and hold an empty belly for 4 seconds if you can, and then do that 4 times. That's 16 seconds. You did it 4 times, that's a minute. That should lower your heart rate, that should reduce your blood pressure, that should open up your tunnel vision, that should open up your auditory exclusion. If you have a stressful incident, even you can do that when you're in the middle of a pursuit. You can do that when you're on your way to a hot call. Those lights and sirens are going, and you know in 45 seconds you're pulling up to an active shooter, man with a gun, knockdown, drag-out fight. Your officer's calling for backup, I need help, and then the radio goes silent. All your senses are going high.
Yeah.
Do that tactical breathing before you get there to kind of try to give you a chance to, A, handle the mission best way possible, and then B, recover from it, because you're not going into it super stressed, and then do it during the situation, and then do it after the situation. Some good videos on YouTube of some officers getting involved in officer-involved shootouts, and you can hear the guy tactical breathing right after the shootout.
And that's something simple, like that you can explain to someone that probably 95% of officers have never heard about.
Right.
You know, so there's these kinds of things that maybe should be built into the in-service every year. Like,
Right.
you know, you go over policy every year, you go over car chases and deadly shootouts and, you know, use of force and all these different things. What are we going over to, you know, nutritional stress, you know, like why aren't these part of the conversations?
Right.
Like, because they're a weapon in yourself. The better you can handle yourself in a situation, that's a weapon in itself.
Yeah, we are weapons,
Yeah, exactly.
and we malfunction. We require lubricant, we require upkeep.
No, it does.
We
Yeah.
require all the maintenance that, you know, our body cameras and our cars do.
And so a couple other notes I put down. By doing all that, I think it will help create more positivity in your department, because now everyone's starting to feel a little better. But then I think you also got to reward these things. You got to reward more creativity. You got to reward more positive behavior. You know, we do reward people for running into buildings and doing that stuff. But, you know, sometimes someone does something little or does something positive, it changes a whole lot of the atmosphere. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think what do we call them? Like, the Unsung Hero Award, right?
Yeah,
Like, you know, things like that. Like, you know, reward those guys that are really stepping up with and helping out each other and doing that stuff.
Yeah, and encourage it too. Like you said, encourage it and reward it. You see the kid, like the giving out a free ice cream thing for a kid wearing a bicycle helmet, all those different things. I don't care how gruff of a cop you are, that feels good.
It
You
does.
know, when you go up to the kid and right away a little standoff, say, "Hey, buddy, no, I just wanted to give you a free coupon for free ice cream because you're wearing your bicycle helmet."
And the
I
kids
don't want
remember
you to
that.
Get hurt.
The
Yeah.
kids remember that.
Yeah, that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then they see you 5 years later. Hey, officer, you gave me, you know, and then
Yeah.
that makes you feel good because you're still there driving the same car down the same street.
Yeah, so doing positive stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a whole nother conversation on just creating more positivity of in your community. That might be a good future.
Yeah. So here's
podcast.
something else on positive. There's a guy named Dr. Haberman. He has a Haberman clinic, and he talks about stress and when you're in really severe stress, almost a panic attack, and ways to get out. And one of those was that tactical breathing I gave you.
Yeah.
Another one is if you're feeling like the weight of the world is on you. You feel like I just can't go any farther. It's 2 a.m. I haven't been to sleep. I got to get up at 5 a.m. I don't have any more sick days. It's too late to call out. You know, I'm just stressed. I'm in my bed. I've had it up to here. I can't have it. And I know a lot of people, including me, have felt that before, where I'm holding up everything in my entire life right now. And if one thing falls, it's all going to cave in on me. It's going to be my fault. I'm going to embarrass my neighbors, my friends, my family, the work. Everybody's going to see. What he says to do is, one, find out what's the worst thing that's going to happen with that feeling. What's the worst thing that feeling can do to you? Is actually ask yourself. And then he says, write it down. What's the worst thing that feeling can do to you? Have you felt it before? Yes. Has it felt that bad before? Probably. Has it killed you? No. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Number two, he says, do that breathing. Because when you do that breathing, it slows your heart rate down and it makes you stop focusing on it. And then number three, so usually this happens at nighttime, but if it happens in the daytime, you can do it as well. He says, get outside. Even if it's 10 degrees, get out, look out your window and look at the horizon. Because when you're looking at the horizon, you're not staring at something. The reason that this problem seems so insurmountable at the time is we're focusing on it. When we focus on something and we're in a high tension rate, our body thinks we're staring at the threat, so it's in that mammalian fight or flight mode.
Okay,
So when
that
we
makes
take
sense.
that breathe, we walk forward, because if we walk forward to the window, to the horizon, it's telling our body we're walking to the threat, so it must be okay to walk to. I'm not running away from it, so it must be okay. So I'm doing three things. I'm breathing, I'm walking towards something. It doesn't have to be the thing, just you're walking to the window, walking to the front door,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at the horizon. Why the horizon? Because I can't focus on it. It's impossible to focus on the horizon. Now you're just looking at everything. So those three things, it takes your mind off of that, okay?
So when we tell someone to go take a walk, we're actually giving
We're actually
them.
helping them. We want them to come back at
Go
some
take a
point.
walk, buddy.
But yeah, think of those three things. You go to Haberman Clinic, Haberman Clinic.
Okay.
You know, that guy is amazing. I listened to a podcast from him, and it was life-changing for dealing with stress and anxiety and so forth. So those are three action steps you can have.
Two more things I wanted to touch on before we close up here real quick. This is something I thought about. We have FTOs in police departments, field training officers, if you're not familiar with the term FTOs, for usually the first year, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is per department, they train that officer. But then after that, it's kind of you're on your own. You have a supervisor, whatnot. But why not create mentors? That's not directly a supervisor, kind of like a big brother, big sister kind of deal. Someone maybe you can confide in a little more and, have a mentor.
Yeah.
So, creating mentors. And it doesn't even have to be a police officer, like the chaplains or things like that's also good ideas.
Yeah.
The other thing I put in here was just be strong enough to know thyself. So one of the phrases I live by, te me no se, Latin term, know thyself. Know your red flags. Maybe you got to write them down. Like, these are the worst moments of my life. And if I get back to these points, this is when I need to find help again, or before it gets to that point. I put down some numbers and stuff like that, but I think the real big thing, if anyone's going to take away from this, anyone in law enforcement, EMTs, doctors, anyone on the first line, nurses in the ERs and dispatchers and firefighters and all that, just start a conversation.
Yeah.
Because maybe one idea comes out of it, maybe one new training session,
Yeah.
and maybe someone gets something out of that.
Yeah.
You want to go over these numbers here? Just for
Yeah, exactly. First, I'll go with the suicide hotline, 1-800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, 24-hour suicide hotline. Again, it could be for you, it could be for somebody else. Call it. I've never called it. I would imagine when you call, they're going to ask you if you're okay, what's going on, and they just want you to talk. They're not going to yell at you. They're not going to embarrass you. They just want you to talk. 1-800-273-8255.
And the other one, so I'm sure there's other ones for EMTs. I'm not familiar with them, or firefighters, but I'm sure if you call this line, they would definitely help you out no matter what. They're not going to turn you away. It's 1-800-COP-LINE. That's the number, 1-800-COPLINE, copline.org. They have information on there. And so the good thing I think about that is, we always say, oh, what are these phone numbers going to do? Who am I going to talk to? You're going to talk to guys or women that experience the same exact thing, especially the cop line. They go down the same route. They've been down the same path. They've seen the same crazy stuff that you've seen, So when you think, oh, no one understands me, no one understands what I'm going through, this is why that's probably a good line for someone in this field,
Right.
because they understand what you've gone through. So,
But you're not alone. So I
Yeah.
want everybody to understand that you are not alone. Your friends, your coworkers, your family, your neighbors, they care about you. And the trick can be, maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to Corey about what's actually bothering you, but I can guarantee you at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or when you're feeling really, really dark, just talking to Corey or talking to somebody about anything, about the Eagles game, about the call you went on, about anything, just hearing a voice, and then maybe laughing and maybe getting through that time. And then maybe if you feel comfortable in the conversation, you can open up and ask for help. But just talk to somebody. Just interrupt that cycle, that negativity cycle. Okay, that's what Haberman wants us to do. Interrupt that negativity cycle. Don't just sit there like you're in a toilet just swirling your way down. Okay, interrupt it, interrupt it, interrupt that cycle, interrupt it.
that's good. Yeah, that's real good advice. So, I think it's good, man. Another good episode here. So,
Indeed.
and I hope that maybe we get some comments, and maybe we'll come back to this and touch on it in the future again.
Yeah,
So,
and my prayer is that somebody listened to this, or somebody calls somebody to listen to this, and you called one of these numbers or did one of these techniques or talked to somebody, and they interrupted that cycle, and are gonna be with us for a lot of years to come. All right, be safe, be ready. Those two numbers again, 800-273-8255 is the National Suicide Hotline, and copline.org, 800-COPLINE, 800-COPLINE. Start the conversation now. Anthony,
thank you.
thank you, sir.